In previous tutorials, I've covered the two main uses for groups in the Cinema 4D license server. One being to define the lease times for each client, and the other in order to define the serial packages that should be assigned to each client. In this tutorial, we're going to go through the options that allow you to actually automatically choose which clients will be joined to which groups without having to manually drag each client into a group within the license server interface. Before I go any further, what I'm first going to do is go ahead and delete the two clients that are already listed in my client list so that I can clean things up and we can see things as they happen. And to do that, I simply right-click on the client line and choose Delete. Now note that you won't be able to delete a client unless its serial package is not used and it's currently expired. If a client is in use, it won't let you delete it from the client list. So what we're going to do in this tutorial is set up the license server to be a bit more secure. This is something you'll definitely want to do if you decide to expose the license server to the outside world by punching a hole in your firewall, in which case I definitely recommend changing the port of your license server. But it also might be a good idea if you happen to be at a college campus, for instance, when you don't want all of the students to be able to gain access to the license server from their own computers. So what you want to do is first, in general, I suggest setting the default group to be blocked. And you do that by just selecting the group up here and checking the blocked checkbox here. And once the group is blocked, you'll notice that in the groups list, it's surrounded with pound signs. And when a group is blocked, that means that it cannot be assigned serial numbers. So every client that gets added to Cinema 4D or to the license server will get added in the default group, and the default group can't get serial numbers, so nobody will get serial numbers unless they're automatically added into another group. Now, it would be a lot of administration to manually drag each client that you want to have access to the license server into the appropriate groups after they've already been rejected and won't be given a license. So what you do instead is use the automatic group joining options. Now we've already got a laptops group here created, and we want to go ahead and make sure that our default lease time here for laptops is something like 12 hours, and our max lease time is something like 30 days. Again, those are things that you'll want to set based on your own company strategy and how you want to use the investment you've made in the license, in your Cinema 4D licenses. Now what we want to do is go ahead and add an additional group, and we're going to call this group internal. That's the group for all of the computers that log on internally that are going to always have access to the license server. And as such, I'm going to make sure that their default lease time and max lease time are just about 10 minutes. They don't need to be very long because these should consistently have access to the network, and I don't want them to hold up licenses longer than they need to. Now what we need to do is configure the internal group to automatically allow anyone who comes in via our network subnet. So if we open the automatic group joining tab here in the settings for the group, you'll see that we have options to set an expression for joining the machine ID, the IP address, the computer, or the username. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and restrict it by IP. In this case, anyone who's in my 192.168.0 subnet should have access to the license server. So I type 192.168.0.*. Or if I wanted it to only be people who get assigned 3-digit final numbers, I could put dot number. Now you would have to have a 100 or above IP address, or I could put number, and then you would have to have a 10 to 99 final octet on your IP address, or I can put a single number, and then you would have to have a 1 to 9 final octet on your IP address. But we'll go ahead and put star so that everyone in this subnet can access the internal group, or will be a member of the internal group. We want to go ahead and disable any other options that aren't going to be valid in this case. Now let's go ahead and start Cinema 4D on this computer. And when I go back to the license server, you can see that it was automatically added to the red internal group. And that's because it has an IP address of 192.168.0.27 in the case of this computer. And so what we want to do now is go ahead and set up the laptops to automatically join based on a different criteria. So what I'm going to do now is actually set up the laptops group for automatic group joining. And the options here are incredibly specific to your individual network and how you can identify the laptops on your network. Perhaps your DHCP server automatically sets your wireless clients to join via a specific subnet, in which case you can use the join IP options, much as we did with the internal group. Maybe all of your laptops start with the same computer name, like lap 5684, lap 5685, in which case you can type lap star and it will match all of those computer names and automatically join them to the laptops group. In my case, my network doesn't offer either of those options. We have unique computer names that aren't specific to laptops or desktops, and I don't have a DHCP server that sets my wireless clients to a separate IP. So what I'm going to do is actually join based on the machine ID. So I'll disable the other options here, and I'm going to start by just typing the first MAC address that needs to connect. And I'm just going to pull these straight out of my router logs. So 001C 2X or 26 CB 7A 9A. Now, another thing that's important to note is that that's the actual MAC address of the computer. Cinema 4D is looking for that last digit, just like you see in the client list. You see a W here or an M, depending on whether it's a Windows or Mac client. So there's a couple different ways you can go. If you happen to know this is a Windows machine, you can type a W at the end. Or you can put a question mark, and that will allow it to match either Windows or Mac. So now what we want to do is actually put in a second machine ID. Well, just for clarity's sake, what I want to do is enclose the first expression there in parentheses. That way I can make sure that Cinema 4D, or that the license server, evaluates that expression as its own expression. Now I'm going to put two pipe characters to represent OR. If you do any programming, you'll understand that the two pipe characters often means OR. So we go ahead and use the two pipe characters, and then we're going to go ahead and enter another MAC address within parentheses. So I'm going to do an open parenthesis, and I'm going to go ahead and type in another MAC address here. Again, I'm going to put a question mark at the end so that either platform can connect. So now I've gone ahead and hard-coded those two MAC addresses to be joined automatically to the laptops group. So let me go ahead and start both of those computers. And you can see that as Cinema 4D started on both of those computers, you got each of those computers automatically joined to the laptops group. So that's a brief introduction to how the automatic group joining works with the Cinema 4D license server.